Yeah. So those use a kind of occult mathematics called accumulation and plexing, and I'm not dwelling on it. Kind of more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
But let's jump into so what we basically the idea that came to us was, since our matrix values are all between 0 and 88, like what would be the process? What would it look like to make a base 89 numogram from 0 to 88? And this was,
Hmm.
again, I should probably pull up the sketch. One of these like late night, 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up from a fever dream and can't sleep and spend 2 hours scribbling this thing out on a piece of paper.
Wasn't this where you were out in the woods somewhere
This was after the
camping?
woods.
After the woods? Yeah.
This is after the vision quest. This is when the antenna was sharp.
Right.
Um, and so this is what it looks like. You can't draw this any other way. You could draw it in different colors or different whatever, but it would always have this topology, these relationships.
Hmm.
So, first of all, 47 plus 41 equals 88,
Hmm.
and 47 minus 41 is equal to 6, and then 6 has to be paired with 82 because that equals
Hmm.
88, and so on. And so when we tried to figure out how a zentity would transform an entity when you cast it, and we realized that, if already a zentity, remember, is basically, the cast, it's filling that space between 0 and 88.
Hmm.
It's basically a numogram function. That's the first function of the numogram. If the top left cell in the matrix of an entity was 47, when you cast it, the zentity is going to be 41. So that's going to
Oh, I see.
this.
Yeah, it's okay. So yeah, it's already the what do we call the negative of it, right?
Right.
Or the cast of it. I see. Yeah.
So once we decoded that formula from the artist, and we realized, we happen to be knee deep in reading stuff about hyperstition and the numogram and all this weird Kabbalah and stuff like that. We
Yeah.
realized, wait a minute, that's the same operation as they're doing at the highest level, this 2 and 7.
Mm.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
entity operation. But we're
Mm-hmm.
doing it at base 89. So we made the numogram. We realized that it creates these two kind of attractors, or two kind of domains, this
Mm-hmm.
kind of house architectural pentagon, kind of
Mm.
organic looking molecule on the left, and then a kind of well on the right, that once you fall into this well, and these are all the repeated numbers, which are also basically how you know synchronicity is happening. So something strangely magical about this one. When you have any one of these numbers, you basically just quickly descend down into 0 and 88. And so
Mm-hmm.
that
And you get
number,
stuck there in theory or
you get stuck.
platonically, because I guess in practice, oh, I guess we could get to that in a second. But yeah, in this diagram, in a static world, you would get stuck there, right?
Exactly. Once you get there, you can't leave. In the same way that if you're in the 9 and 0, you can never leave. That's what these
Mm-hmm.
smaller numbers are for, to get you out. But at the highest level, you can't leave. And so when we started applying that to, a matrix here, the top left corner of this entity is 4. And so here's 4 on that base 89 numogram. The zentity that'll be created, the top left, which is encoded in this, strange tick Z notation, is actually the equivalent of 84. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you cast them together, the zentity keeps this value, this 84 in the top left, and whatever other value you get from doing the negative, for the casting. But then the entity is transformed and it moves along. So that top left number ends up, transforming from 4 into 80.
Into 80.
And
So what's the direct? So why do you go that direction? So up and not down? What's the logic that's built into that?
it's this ASCII version doesn't have directionality because it's an ASCII version. But if we were to draw it with these arrows, it would have
Oh, I
the
see. Yeah.
directionality is given. Uh,
Okay.
so the entity becomes 80, and this was a really cool thing. So any kind of designer knows that, like, when you design something and it feels elegant and sophisticated, and then all of a sudden you walk into a bookstore and a book falls off the shelf and it's like the definition of the thing you just made, you're on the right track. Well, that
Hmm.
kind of happened. There was a deep footnote in one of these website pages of the early transactions of CCRU, and this one character, Northanger, um, basically said, "Hey everyone, this is in 2005. Hey everyone, I just discovered this new website called Wikipedia. It's really cool. They have all these weird definitions of things I've never heard of before. One of them is called hodology. Hadology, according to Wikipedia, is the study of pathways and appears in literature involving the study of the brain, dynamic groups, architecture, theater, and so on. And so esoterically, hadology is related to the study of paths on the tree of life. And if you think of the base 89 numogram as the tree of life at the center of the Daemonican universe, then hadology, which is basically what you're hodling in your wallet over time, traces out paths on this tree of life. And so, one of the things that we're working on is ways of visualizing this so that people can understand when they perform these functions on their entities, what the underlying mathematics are actually doing to mutate the entity through this strange multidimensional universe.
I see. So it's like hodology.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you say when you enter O4 against the A4, and then you get transitioned into 80 there, unless something happens, you're going to be stuck in that pentagram or
That's right.
pentagon.
The more you go, you keep getting stuck in that pentagon if you just keep casting.
Right. Okay. So, but, as we were speaking previously, or mentioned, as we were talking about previously, because there's so much feedback, right, with like everything else that's going on in your wallet, that means that casting is not the only thing that moves you along this tree, or you could be teleported to a completely different part of the tree, because someone called like token URI on your token.
The token, yes, but the token URI part would just be if we started to create these really complex feedback loops. But in the most simple version of the universe, if you were to say,
that's going to happen because really
going to happen immediately. But like just for the sake of clarity for people trying to follow the logic, if you call cast 4, 5, 10, 20, 100 times, after a while, all of the numbers in your matrix are going to go from a fairly random distribution as they might be at the beginning to basically just a whole bunch of copies of the numbers 24, 40, 80, 72, 56, and 88. Those are the only numbers that can exist after a while because you basically funnel down into these kind of attractors or these wells in the numogram. But you can break out of that if you were to sell a loot bag in your wallet or buy a different entity a different NFT.
Right.
That is another dimension. Or if you hold an NFT that itself is alive. And one of those options would be, the NFTs we're going to be making with these artists on top of kind of using Daemonica.
Yeah.
Or as you pointed out a long time ago to me, if you hold one of these Uniswap V3 NFTs and the cost of the two values of, in your Uniswap pool changes. And as a result, a couple of those digits in the SVG file or the basis for encoding are going to change. And that might jostle you enough to get out of this loop. And, and then you call cast 10 more times and you're back in the loop. So it's this really interesting thing of like how you interact with your entity will determine where it lives in this tree of life, and which sort of energies, forces, concepts, and so on are kind of being captured within its 64 cells in its matrix.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. And then obviously also if you, if, as I suspect will happen, somebody adds entities to the dimensions, right? Every time you call cast, that's going to create like really dynamic. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like there is this attractor, but I almost see that attractor as like platonic in the sense that it's like theoretical, right? Because kind of like when you draw a perfect circle, right? That's only possible in the theoretical realm, because what might end up happening in practice is these entities get added as a dimension, and then it's still real, but it's just going to manifest in a different way, right?
Because so what you're saying is you call cast, all of the numbers in your entity matrix will start to gravitate towards this pentagon or this 88. But because you're going to mint a new entity into your wallet, which then that entity will be dependent on, it'll instantly get resprung into the, randomly
Yeah.
distributed around this numerogram. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which which I find fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Okay, so I mean, we're sort of making progress out, but wait, there's more, right? To this,
Right.
it's not the end of it.
So there's one more thing, and I don't really have any slides about this except for this one that sort of, I think, captures the idea. So to kind of recapitulate a lot of what we're saying, this is putting time onto the blockchain. And because it's making these things that are buzzing and moving, but it's occult time, it's ritual time, it's not not empty calendrical time where every day is 24 hours and every hour is 60 minutes, right? So it's moving at its own pace. Each one of these entities is a different calendar of its own. Actually, the artist calls every kind of new tick in the clock a new day, which is based on an idea from a philosopher. And so it's kind of more of a calendar even than a clock.
Right.
And then, so how do you do that? Well, or how do you make use of that? So anybody can take an entity and kind of like build on top of it. And they can say, hey, in the same way that Daemonica entities ingest the other NFTs and create a different output based on them, I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to use Daemonic entities as one of the dimensions in my universe. And because that's constantly moving, we're going to get some interesting movement. Cool. But then the other thing that we offer up, the last kind of spell or function or operation, is called bind. And that's a function on the Zentity contract. And what that allows someone to do is, if you hold a Zentity, if you're an owner, and you own another NFT, you can bind. In fact, now that I think about it, I don't even think you have to own the other NFT. You can basically you can bind your Zentity to another NFT. Doesn't have to be on chain. It can be anything, any kind of NFT.
Yep.
And when that other NFT is sold and traded, the ownership of yours entity automatically goes out of your hands and into the hands of whoever owns that other NFT. So you basically tether them together. And why would you want to do that? Well, because these forthcoming projects that we're definitely going to be working on, and hope others will, might have a reciprocal function to that bind that says, if somebody, if you're writing another contract, let's call it flowers, if somebody binds a Zentity to a flower, then let's change the color of the flower based on that Zentity. And if they bind a second Zentity, let's change the color of the stem. Or let's change the composition of the neural net that renders that flower.
X, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but it's something, I just had the idea. Do you remember like in the early days of K21, how we were looking for a way, because I remember mentioning to you that, sometimes I'd buy these NFTs and people would come along and place like tiny bids, and how some people would interpret that as like annoying, but I interpreted it, and actually having spoken to a couple of these bidders, it's their way of leaving like a hey, I really like that NFT imprint. And we were then thinking of like, what might be ways where we could channel that energy, right, into like having people who really admire, say, either the K21 works or other works that we like, leaving like their mark on it, right, and say, hey, thanks for putting that together, and I really like your art piece. Binding, even if there's no reciprocal function, binding might be a very clean way to do that, and very personal way, in that I have an entity, I have, an affinity for an entity, and I create a Zentity, and then say I'm a huge fan of punk number 7876, right? And then I bind my, almost like those, those like, I'm gonna get the cultures wrong, but like those Japanese shrines, right, where you like write a wish or something and then attach it to something that, so kind of like that. I mean, you could see this seems like a much cleaner way than all the other ways that at least I had sort of thought of, channeling that energy.
That's brilliant. As you're saying that, I think we should add a field, a parameter to the bind function where you can attach a message, because it's sort of like like broadcast email or something, right? Where you can like,
Yeah.
you can say, hey, I'm recognizing your NFT as something that's significant to me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, okay, so this is something I'm very interested in. Um, again, to get political for just a hot second. Mark Zuckerberg laid the gauntlet when he rebranded as Meta, right?
Yeah.
We're in an arms race now to build the metaverse. And the question is it going to be oligarchs in Silicon Valley or is it going to be anons? And you know where my heart is, and I know where your heart is.
Yeah.
What makes crypto interesting to me, and what has made Canon so interesting and rewarding, is that it more so in a bull market than not, but nonetheless, we've both been in this for many years, and we know that this kind of idea persists.
Mhm.
Is it's not the toxic crypto bro space that people outside of it think it is.
Mhm.
It's actually a gift economy where people in this
Yes.
trustless universe, first and foremost, gift their trust. We did that with
A
K21.
hundred percent.
Hey,
A
artist,
100%.
here's money. We're going to drop it in, we're going to airdrop it to your wallet. We hope you'll give us an artwork.
Yeah, and they're trusting us not to mess it up as well, right?
Exactly. So let's hope this call doesn't mess it up. But so no, so at the heart of what the metaverse could be is a gift economy.
Mhm.
And what you've just described is a mechanism for attaching gifts. And then, what does one do when in a gift economy when they receive a gift? They don't give another gift in return necessarily. They recognize the gift that was given with gratitude. And
Mhm.
so another contract that recognizes that gift, forthcoming future contracts that will be written, if they recognize a gift that comes in and that,
Mm.
changes the artwork or changes the
Mhm.
title or shows up in the attributes or whatever and just says, hey, I
Mhm.
recognize that you shared the love.
Mhm.
Some people might share the hate, but so maybe there shouldn't be a message attached to it. We'll see. But yeah, it allows for that gift economy to happen at a very primitive level, and I think that's yet another signal that this might be a worthwhile project.
Yeah, I mean, you could always send because you could always send anybody can write anything on the blockchain, right? I could write whatever I wanted on the blockchain, and your contract's not going to stop me from doing that. But if you didn't like his entity that got, oh no, these are actually bound. You can't even get rid of them.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting.
right.
Powerful. I mean, I was also thinking of it from the angle of mischief, not malicious, but you can be mischief. But again, it's not like the knowledge is there. It's gonna happen, right? There's nothing to prevent this.
Yeah. As you're saying that too, I'm thinking there's got to be a way to incorporate case spec into this. Case spec could
Yeah,
be message passing or
yeah,
something.
possibly. Um, okay, so then that's
Anyway,
that's bind. That's the bind
that's it,
function.
man. This is a 2.5 hour like marathon podcast, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I'll just say this because I know it's been 2.5 hours. I'll just say this briefly, and we've both got a ton of stuff that we need to do. But I'm super glad that we managed to capture all this. I feel really good about it. I feel that we've captured like the essence, both the sort of like mystical or like philosophical essence, but as well as the details. And I guess one thing that maybe we leave for the viewers to imagine is what you could, I mean, I would just give like a few, hints, right? Like what you could actually build with something that it's effectively alive. And it means that as a developer, you can, whether it's with the entities or the entities or a combination or using bind or whatever, there's a lot to work with there where you don't have to worry about whether the dynamism that you want to include is going to be gimmicky. Like it's a very strong foundation. And some of the, I guess I can't give away some of the stuff that's in the pipeline, but even like very visually stunning things that are changing with like the heartbeat of the blockchain, and along with people's hopes and dreams and fears. I'm incredibly excited to see what we and others build on this, and how this thing sort of organically grows, and also in a very visual way, right? It's something that, yeah, you can see it, kind of like you see a plant grow, right? It's not just conceptual; you can actually see it change, and I'm very excited to see that happen.
Yeah, totally.
Good stuff. Anything else, OX? I know we've been on for quite some time. Anything else before we jump off that comes to mind? Otherwise, we can call this a wrap, and release this at the appropriate time into the world.
Let's wrap it.
All right. Thanks a lot, OX, and yeah, always excited to walk through these things with you. So yeah, we'll speak soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Fast.
All right. See you later.